Power Rangers Turbo. Turbo was the perfect storm of things that could go wrong, did go wrong. It was adapting a very zany Super Sentai series. I do like Car Ranger, but that type of comedy is very different than what PR usually does. So it causes a disconnect between the source footage, the established characters, and the world. However, sifting through the detonator plans, the weirdness, and Elgar's stupidity, Turbo does have some good rubies in the rough.
Blue Centurion.
I've always treated the Blue Centurion as the sixth Ranger of Turbo. I know everyone can endlessly go into an argument with that, but he was unique. This is where the comedy part of Turbo is okay. He's an alien, acts and does all kinds of weird stuff. You could accept that from him over the main cast being funny. This is why I liked him. Granted, he didn't get to do all that much between limited footage and the writers not really caring, but still had an impact on the season. Blue Centurion was from the future, had cool equipment, his own Zord, the overall theme of him is interesting. I still think the show could tap more into his backstory and expand on it. Instead of creating generic someone from an alien race, why not have them come from Blue Centurion's planet?
Time travel done right.
Power Rangers has had a really bad relationships with time travel stories. The Alien Ranger arc being a confusing mess. Time Force, while fully based on the premise, never used it in a substantial way. The kooky Wild West episodes, to the recent failure with Dino Supercharged's finale. Anytime I saw time travel stories on PR, I just put on my disappointment hat and buckled up. It's ironic that a bad Power Rangers season actually made the best logical time travel story. It involves reversing and fast forwarding time, trying to prevent the Rangers from blowing up a rocket. It even integrates the comedy really well. On top of that, uses the Phantom Ranger. You can see that he's outside of space-time, so he has a special ability. It expands on what he can do. Just because it's a standalone episode doesn't mean it can't help progress the story in a small way. Just don't info dump at the end of the episode like Mystic Force did.
The Youth Center.
This is the final season that the Youth Center is used in proper fashion. While I did hate that Ernie had left the show, I always felt Ernie was kind of robbed. I would have still hated that Bulk and Skull were turned into monkeys, but Ernie would have been used a lot more. Stone was a fine replacement. It was a good way to give the location a final send-off. It's been used for 5 years. Has worn so many different types of hats. School functions, cultural events, plays, family gatherings, science fairs. All the times Bulk had thrown food on him. It was a home away from home. This is the only positive I can give to the monkey subplot and Justin being a bookworm. It brought back the feeling of MMPR Season 1.
Piranhatrons.
Every now and again, Power Rangers changes the minions from the Super Sentai series. This is one area that the show hasn't screwed up on. I agreed when they changed them for Turbo, Space, Lost Galaxy, and Dino Thunder. Even though I like Car Ranger, the Whoopers are visually not good. Their replacements, the Piranhatrons, I really like those suits. They visually work with the theme of Divatox, mimic her sub-base. The suits are different than past minions. Most of the past suits were skin tight and reflective. Not that much going on with them. The Piranhatrons are more steampunk, ironclad-like armor with bolts. They have defined body muscles, so they feel more imposing. One good thing coming out from the movie. Plus, there's a few variants of them. The only thing I hated was that certain suits had the eye holes too big, which broke the illusion for me.
Stealing the Turbo Megazord.
This was a highlight of the season. We've had big Megazord moments in the past. Megazord fell down in lava, the Thunderzord's blowing up, but this was a good multi-episode story. It came out of nowhere, since you don't really expect this type of story coming up. It blew my head when Havoc stole the Turbo Megazord, the Rangers getting new Zords with all 5 having warrior modes, high stance mode, and having to fight the Turbo Megazord to get it back. It was fun action, and it gave me a reason to care about the season again.
The Submarine.
Another change from Car Ranger I preferred. Car Ranger in places was too literal with its car theme, where a whole planet was surrounded by endless roads and circuits. That made more sense in Go Ranger. It's pretty ridiculous, so when Divatox and her sub was in Turbo, I was happy. It's weird in its own way, periscope that can use anything with water, and it has some logic to it. A ship that travels in space could work underwater. That's where NASA tests a lot of their equipment. It's also a visual representation of the season being a fish out of water. That could be another reason why it was created, acting like a bridge for the Car Ranger goofiness to the more American type of stuff. You can also look at it as a fish obeying its molten master or risk being cooked alive. Plus a breath of fresh air where we've had so many seasons with aliens coming to Earth, but we're always seeing them on the moon or in spaceships. It did get boring after 4 years. How many times do I have to see the Earth on some balcony? The interior was pretty cool, had an airlock where monsters would enter or be created. It's brightly lit, had a lot of things in it, and no fog, which I got tired of in Zed's chamber room. We even get a two-parter with the Rangers going around the place as bugs. We almost never get to see the bad guy's lair past the main room. Turbo did break some villain ground. I can appreciate it for that.
The Robot Rangers.
This was a high concept episode where we find out that the Rangers were experimenting in some other way and getting help. It's the best episode that featured Justin and used him for the story, not just be the story. He's playing this robot that notices things wrong since he was programmed to forget he was a robot. It does bring up some hard questions. Was it right to clone the Rangers? Why not have artificial robots be Rangers from this point forward and not endanger humans? I know, I remember that Lightspeed dabbed in this later. I have more faith in Zordon than some pencil pusher at Lightspeed. Was it right to treat the Justin robot as a lab rat by having him freak out then telling the truth later? This was all done on purpose. I also thought it was stupid that they risked being exposed into the youth center when Ashley was doing some repairs. It was a test on Robot Justin, but the Rangers' lives could have been screwed. As a bonus, this episode fixed a continuity error that happened in the season finale of Super Megaforce. We can presume that the Robot Rangers were called for the legendary battle, although I personally don't like this explanation for the sake of real characters playing them, and since either A, means that the real Justin wasn't used, or B, the robot Justin got shafted. I also have to point out that this episode, while still great, it did copy a similar episode from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
General Havoc.
This is another example of a new villain coming in and doing some good for the season. Granted, General Havoc didn't replace Divatox, he did give the show that punch in the worry factor. Divatox skims that evil leader bumbling screw-up line. Over time you start going, she hasn't done all that much, this is getting boring. So introducing Havoc as a competent leader that will do the grittier work keeps the zany nature of what's already going on, but opens them up to different stories. Havoc also acted as a badass shield, so if there was some questionable thing that they had to bring in, like say the Whompers, it fudged its way through. His story and the way the writers handled the Car Ranger footage wasn't half bad. It brought in some new stuff. It was a soft reboot that went along with the new Rangers, taking the Rangers off guard and stealing the Turbo Megazord. Although I do hate that we again get another balcony looking over Earth when the sub base goes into space.
Phantom Ranger.
You have to give credit where credit is due. Car Rangers footage gave Turbo Vrv Master. His only usable material was him giving the Rescue Zords and Artillerytron to the Rangers. Normally in other seasons they would have just dropped him after these episodes, but the writers decided to expand his character. They got lucky and hit all the right buttons. He's an allied alien that helps out Zordon, has a predator-like cloak. His suit is powered by that ruby crystal. Then his main draw is not knowing who he is, which was great because it gives fans so many possibilities on his backstory. Like, is he a ranger from the future since we know he can exist out of space-time? Was he a past ranger that didn't want to reveal himself? The story also opens up for Cassie. She becomes a critical piece for his mystery. I don't think we would have cared as much if she didn't. Even after 20 years, fans still would like to know who he was. I think this type of thread could be continued in the show. Orion could have been him as an example. It would have benefited that season the most. Tweaking the original story, Orion's people could have been dealing with invaders for decades. Zordon could have found him and asked for his help back in 1997. His memory was then lost in a recent attack. Finds the Silver Key the same way, but has this uncontrollable drive to go to Earth. The same type of backstory is told in the show, but with one added thing. He has this odd feeling when he sees the Ranger keys on the wall. String that along for some episodes and replace one of the stupid filler episodes, revealing he's been to Earth before. Vrock was the one who stole his memories and the reason why they came here to begin with. Killing Vrock off before he revealed who Orion was. They then go to Gosei. Gosei then suggests that he creates a Ranger key from Orion's personal energy, which would have revealed him as the Phantom Ranger. Gosei then tells everyone who he was. Orion morphs into the Phantom Ranger on occasion. As he uses the key, his memory gets restored over time. This then allows him to walk up to Cassie in the finale and tell her. It works backstory into the core parts of both seasons, as well as uses the 20th anniversary to its advantage. I know some of you would complain about his age, but he's an alien. Just say his species ages differently. Easy fix.
Cast change.
Normally, I wouldn't list this as a good thing about a TV series. When people leave a show, it's supposed to be sad. We've come to love the characters over the years. Not with Turbo. Except for some moments here and there, Tommy, Kat, Tanya and Adam were just badly handled when they left. Picture them leaving for only what you got from the show. No commercials, no previews, no news articles are available to you. Before the power transfer episodes, you had almost no idea that the Rangers were contemplating leaving. Instead of building up final stories for the 4 characters, closing some loose ends, they were stuck in generic plot world. Because of this nonsense, I stopped caring about them. The show didn't, why should I? When TJ, Cassie, Ashley, and Carlos came in, the second half of Turbo was way better than the beginning. This is where the show started being itself again. Decent plots, using characters, Bulk and Skull were reverted back to normal, the Phantom Ranger comes in, and we have 4 fresh faces to learn about, plus Justin, who was used in a more meaningful ways. Was it perfect? No, but I was invested in TJ's love for baseball, that weird dog episode with Cassie, Carlos's Halloween episode, the Robot Rangers, Chase into Space. If Turbo had started off with a new cast, I think the season would have been more accepted than it's now. A lot of the problems does come from Car Ranger style, but the rest of it was the screw up with the switchover. I will admit that I enjoyed Turbo more than I did originally when I was watching it. It coming out every week drove me insane since you're dealing with the bad areas of the show over so much time, so I kept getting mad at it. When you watch Turbo as a whole now, you don't worry about waiting on it. I can't forgive the first half of the series, just like how I can't forgive Dino Supercharge, but I can appreciate what Turbo gave to the franchise. What are your thoughts on Turbo? Do you flat out hate it, don't care about anything, or have you warmed up to it? This part was good, that was good. And if you have a suggestion on what future topic you'd like me to do, leave a comment down below. Next week, I'm going to be clawing my ways into the good aspects of Power Rangers Jungle Fury.